Shabbat shalom, peace and love, Shabbat shalom. We'll be reading from the book of Psalms, chapter 85 to 87, and moving from Psalms to the book of Proverbs, chapter 18. But we're going to start first in the book of Psalms, chapter 85. Bear with me as I try to get through this. God willing. The book of Psalms, chapter 85, verse 1. Yahuwah, you shall take pleasure in your land. You shall turn back the captivity of Jacob. Verse 2, you shall take away the crookedness of your people. You shall cover all their sin. You shall cover all their sin. Let it be. Verse 3, you shall withdraw all withdraw all your wrath, and you shall turn from your fierce displeasure. Verse 4, turn back to us, O Elohim of our deliverance, and cause your vexation towards us to cease. Verse 5, would you be enraged with us forever? Would you draw out your displeasure from generation to generation? Verse 6, would you not revive us again for your people to rejoice in you? Verse 7, show us your loving commitment, O Yahuwah, and give us your deliverance. Verse 8, let me hear what El Yahuwah speaks, for he speaks peace to his people and to his lovingly committed ones, and let them not turn again to folly. Verse 9, truly his deliverance is near to those who fear him, for esteem to dwell in our land. Verse 10, loving commitment and truth shall meet. Righteousness and peace shall kiss. Verse 11, truth sprouts forth from the earth, and righteousness looks down from the heaven. Verse 12, indeed, Yahuwah gives what is good, and our land yields its increase. Verse 13, righteousness goes before him and prepares a way for his footsteps. That was chapter 85 of Psalms. What stood out to me is the first verse. It says, Yahuwah, you should take pleasure in your land. You shall turn back the captivity of Jacob. So expect some captivity being turned back. And also verse 2, it says, you shall take away the crookedness of your people. You shall cover all their sins. You shall cover all their sins. So that stood out to me. Verse 5, it says, would you be enraged with us forever? Would you draw out your displeasure from generation to generation? That's a heavy question, you know? And then it says in verse 9, truly, his deliverance is near to those who fear him. Truly, his deliverance is near to those who fear him, and that's those who hate evil. His deliverance is near to those who hate evil. His deliverance is near to those who hate evil. That's what fearing him, you know, that's the definition of fearing him. The definition of fearing him is to hate evil. So, yeah, truly his deliverance is near to those who fear him, for esteem to dwell in our land. That stood out to me in that chapter. Now we're getting into chapter 86 of Psalms. Psalms chapter 86, verse 1. Incline your ear, O Yahuwah, answer me, for I am poor. Answer me, for I am poor and needy. Verse 2, guard my being, for I am lovingly committed. You are my Elohim. Save your servant who is trusting in you. Verse 3, show favor to me, O Yahuwah, for I cry to you all day long. Verse 4, bring joy to the being of your servant, for to you, O Yahuwah, I lift up my being. Verse 5, for you, Yahuwah, are good and ready to forgive, and great in loving commitment to all those who call upon you. To all those who call upon you. Verse 6, give ear, O Yahuwah, to my prayer, and listen to the voice of my pleadings. Verse 7, in the day of my distress, I call upon you, for you answer me. Verse 8, there is none like you among the mighty ones, O Yahuwah, and like your works there are none. Verse 9, let all nations you have made come and bow themselves before you, O Yahuwah, and give esteem to your name. Verse 10, for you are great and are doing wonders. You are Elohim, you alone. You alone. Verse 11, teach me your way, O Yahuwah. Let me walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear. Unite my heart to fear your name. Unite my heart to fear your name. Verse 12, I praise you, O Yahuwah, my Elohim, with all my heart, and I esteem your name forever. Verse 13, for your loving commitment is great toward me, and you have delivered my being from the depths of Sheol. You have delivered my being from the depths of Sheol. So the depths of Sheol, the Sheol is, if you don't know, it's the grave. That's the grave. Verse 14, O Elohim, the proud have risen against me, and a band of dreaded men have sought my life and have not set you before them. Verse 15, but you, O Yahuwah, are a compassionate El and loving favor. But you, O Yahuwah, are a compassionate El and showing favor, patient and great in loving commitment. Loving commitment and truth. Verse 16, turn to me and show favor to me. Give your strength to your servant and save the son of your female servant. Verse 17, show me a sign for good and let those hating me see it and be ashamed. For you, Yahuwah, have helped me and comforted me. So that was the chapter. That was chapter 86 of the book of Psalms. And what stood out to me in chapter 86 of the book of Psalms was verse 17. It says, show me a sign for good and let those hating me see it and be ashamed. For you, Yahuwah, have helped me and comforted me. So he's like, show me a sign. So we've always been asking for these signs. Even who what I believe is David who wrote this. Even David was seeking the sign to be shown, and let those hating him see it and be ashamed. You know, so people could be like, yeah, oh wow, the Most High, all praise, does exist. And we to this day be seeking, a lot of people seek for that to this day. Another verse that stood out to me was verse 13. For your loving commitment is great toward me, and you have delivered my being from the depths of Sheol, from the depths of the grave. So it's like your loving commitment is great towards me, and you have delivered. See, he delivers those who trust in him, who believes in him, who follow his instructions. He delivers them from the grave. And that, your flesh belongs to the world, but your spirit belongs to him. Your flesh belongs to the world, but the spirit belongs to the creator of the supreme spirit, the creator of all spirits, your ruach, the breath of life within you. Another verse that stood out to me was it says, "For you are great and are doing wonders. You are Elohim, you alone, you alone. You are Elohim, you alone." So it's not another Elohim. It's one Elohim, is one supreme spirit. And then it says, "Teach me your way, O Yahweh. Let me walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear your name. Unite my heart to fear your name." So this is what we should be seeking. This is what we should be asking. This is what we should be, this should be our goal, is to fear his name. Chapter 87, Psalms chapter 87, verse 1. His foundation is in the set apart mountains. Verse 2. Yahuwah loves the gates of Sion more than all the dwellings of Jacob. Verse 3. Esteem matters are spoken of you, O city of Elohim, Salah. Verse 4. I mention Rahab and Babel to those who know me. See, O Philistia, and Zor and Cush. This and that one was born there. Verse 5, and of Zion it is said, each one was born in her. For the Most High himself does establish her. Verse 6, Yahuwah does write in the register of the peoples, this one was born there. Verse 7, and the singers and the players on instrument, all my fountains are in you. So this short chapter said a lot. This is chapter 87, and it said a lot. And I'm going to just go down the list of what I noticed. So it says his foundation is in the set apart mountains. So the set apart mountains is the set apart kingdom. Verse 2, Yahuwah loves the gates of Zion. He loves the gates of Zion. So Zion. He loves the gates of Zion. So it says more than all the dwellings of Jacob. He loves the gates of Zion more than all the dwellings of Jacob. And it takes some study. It takes some research and study to figure out the difference between the gates of Zion and the dwellings of Jacob. That'll be an interesting, study and research to get into. Verse 3, it says, esteemed matters are spoken of you, O city of Elohim. Esteemed matters are spoken of you. Esteemed matters are spoken of you. And it says, verse 4, I mentioned Rahab and Babel to those who know me. See, O Philistia and Zor with Cush. Remember, Cush is in, Cush is in, that brown part of the world. This and that one was born there. It says this and that one was born there. Verse 5, in Zion, it is said, each one was born in her. So each one was born in Zion. Each one was born in Zion. That's interesting. Cush, born in Zion. Philistia, born in Zion. Zor, born in Zion. Rahab, Babel, born in Zion. Each one was born in her. Verse 4, it says, for the Most High himself does establish her. Verse 6, it says, Yahuwah does write in the register of the peoples. This one was born there. He does write in the register of peoples. This one was born there. And also verse 7, it says, the singers and the players on instrument. All my fountains are in you. So singers and players of instrument. People who are singers and players of instruments. Pay attention to them. I'm a musician myself. And yeah, it's something about musicians and instruments. The Most High, He claims those people. He claims those people. Those it's worth the research. It's worth the study. So that was the book of Psalms, chapter 85 to 87. Then we're going to get into the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs, chapter 18. So the book of Proverbs, chapter 18. Book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verse 1. The separatist seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound wisdom. The separatist seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound wisdom. So this is one who's stubborn and leaning on their own understanding, and he separates himself from everyone, and he breaks out against all sound wisdom. Sound wisdom is spiritual wisdom. So if you're against spiritual wisdom and you're separating yourself, this is you. But if you're separating yourself from the fools, those who are foolish, and you're the one with sound wisdom, you're the one with spiritual wisdom, continue to do what you're doing. Continue to separate yourself from the fools. Continue to separate yourself from the foolishness, because you're not doing anything wrong. Now if you're separating yourself from the spiritual wisdom, if you're separating yourself from spiritual sound wisdom, and you're the fool, you gotta come up out of that. It's time to yeah, it's time to read the room and be like, and realize, this ain't working. This ain't working out. Verse 2, a fool does not delight in understanding, but in uncovering his own heart. So this is the same fool. Does not delight in understanding, does not want to know, does not want to understand what it is to be understood, whether it's understanding someone, understanding what is said, understanding something, understanding what was read, what was written. They don't want to understand that. They just want to uncover their own heart. They just want to, they want to be right. They want to be right about what it is that they feel, what it is that they believe, not what they, research, not what they, read on their own, but what they feel and what they believe without research. What they feel, what they believe without any research. What they feel, what they believe without any reading, of their own. And this is the fool. A fool does not delight in understanding. So you have to research and read to understand. You have to listen, read, and research to understand. But you have fools who are just into uncovering their own heart. Just, they're right. They want to be right, regardless if they're how wrong they may be. Verse 3, when a wrong one comes, scorn comes too, and with shame comes reproach. So when someone who is wrong, someone who do people wrong, someone who says what is wrong, someone who does what is wrong, when they come along, scorn comes too. So like scorn is like mockery, drama, you know, drama follows these people, arguments follow these people, disagreements follow these people, you know. So this is what comes with people who do people wrong. is, drama. So when they come around, it's always drama. And it's like it says, and with shame comes reproach. So with shame comes reproach, with shame comes reproach, which is like, with this shame comes correction. Eventually, they'll be ashamed of what they've done, and what comes after is correction, you know, correcting their wrongs, or someone correcting them and telling them and calling them out. Verse 4, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is flowing. The fountain of wisdom is flowing stream. Is flowing stream. So it's like it says, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters, and the fountain of wisdom is a flowing stream. Verse 5, it is not good to show partiality to the wrong, or to turn aside the righteous in right ruling. So it's not good to show partiality. Like it's not good to favor, you know, it's not good to favor the wrong. And when you know that the wrong is wrong, when you know that the wrong is wrong, you got to call it out. You got to call them for what you got to call them for who they are. If they wrong, call it for call it out. You know, call it out. You can't favor the wrong because the wrong is your friend. If your friend is wrong, call him. Call him or her out for what they for what they who they are, for what they are. Call them wrong. Call a spade is what they say. When someone is wrong, even though they're your friend, you can't say they ain't. You can't hold your tongue, or be partial to them because they're your friend, or they're your family. If they're wrong, they're wrong. They're right, they're right. So you can't go against what is right and what is fair. So when a wrong one, it says it is not good to show partiality to the wrong, no matter who that wrong is, who may be wrong. If the wrong may be your friend, if the wrong may be your spouse, the wrong may be your family. They're wrong. If they're wrong, call it out. It's not good to show partiality to the wrong, or to turn aside the righteous in right ruling, or to turn aside the righteous in right ruling. Verse 6, a fool's lips enter into strife, and his mouth calls for blows. A fool's lips enter into strife. A fool's lips enter into strife, and his mouth calls for blows. So a fool's lips enter into strife, and his mouth calls for blows. Like they talk themselves into getting punched on. Fools talk themselves into getting punched on. Eventually, people say too much. They talk trash. They talk behind people's back. They slander. They make up lies. They lie to people. They lie about people. This is what leads to people putting bringing blows to their mouth. You know, this is what comes to blows to someone's mouth when they are talking trash, talking slander on people, talking lies about people. You know, verse 7: a fool's mouth is his ruin, and his lips are the snare of his life. So it's, again, a fool's mouth is their ruin. They talk themselves in their own ruin, in their own destruction, in their own downfall. Fools, their lips are the trap of their life. They lips get them. That what they say, what comes from their lips is what traps them up in life. What traps them up in life, and that's all of us. Each of our flesh are fools, and if we let our lips, run wild and talk us into some trouble, talk us into a trap, that's all. That's what we that's what we have to reap. We have to reap what we sow. So we have to watch what we say. We gotta watch We gotta watch what we say, watch what we, who we talk on and talk about. Verse 8, the words of a slanderer are like delicacies, and they go down into the inner parts of the heart. The word of a slanderer are like delicacies. So when we hear people slandering others, it's like a dopamine. It's like a drug. It's like, 'cause that's why that's why most people gravitate to, you know gravitate to um gossip, you know, gravitate to gossip and other people's business. The tea. Everybody wants to know the tea. Everybody wants to know everyone's business, and that's why it's fulfilling. It says the words of slander, the words of a slanderer are like delicacies. So most people like hearing you talk about other people. Me personally, I don't. I've came to I came to not enjoy that. I came to not like anyone talking about. I don't want to hear you talking about somebody else. I don't be around people that talk about people. I don't. It's kind of why I stay to myself, because I don't like hearing people talk about other people. I don't want to hear that. But most people eat that up. Most people want to eat the tea. They want to drink the tea. They want to hear the gossip. They want to hear someone's business. They want to hear you slander someone else. They want to hear you, tell somebody else's business. So this is what this is. It says the words of a slanderer are like delicacies, and they go down into the inner parts of the heart. They go down into the inner parts of the heart. This is what we love. Most people love to hear this. Most people love to hear this. This is what they come for. This is what they come around these people for. It's to hear the tea. They come around these people to hear you slander them, other people. They come around these people to hear you tell other people business. And people know that. You know, they got to keep business open, so they keep slandering people. They keep telling people business. They keep, this is what they do, but it leads to their ruin eventually. Verse 9, also, he who is slack in his work is a brother of a master destroyer. He who is slack in his work is a brother of a master destroyer. So if you lazy, you likely have a brother that is worse than you. Verse 10, the name of Yahuwah is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe. The name of Yahuwah is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe. So it's not just any name. There's a name that is a safe haven. There's a name that you can run to, and it's a strong tower. The name of Yah, as in hallelujah. The name of Yah, as in hallelujah. The name of Yah is a strong tower. The righteous run into it and are safe. So the righteous are those who follow his instructions, who obey his commands. They run to his name for safety. Verse 11. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his own imagination. This is how rich people think. They feel like their wealth is like a high wall. In most cases, it is. In most cases, their wealth does protect them from a lot, but it can't protect them from what the wrath that comes from the Most High. Natural disasters, that's from the Most High. Like, events of weather, events of, natural disaster, that's from the Most High, that man has no control of, from as far as I know. You hear people say that they can control the weather and control, earthquakes. To a certain extent, that may be true, but it's a lot that they don't have control over. They may appear to have control over it, but the Most High is in control of letting that rain fall and stopping it when he stops it. letting those volcanoes erupt and stopping them when he stops them. You know, earthquakes shake and stopping them when they stop them. So this is what that wealth, you know, can only that wealth can only protect you from so much. That wealth can protect you from other people, but it can't protect you from God. It can't protect you from God. Wealth can't protect you from the wrath of God. And we're going to see that. We see that, you know, every now and then in these events, but you're going to absolutely, you know, yeah, be a witness to that in the day of judgment. Verse 12, before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty, and before esteem is humility. So before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty. Like there is impatience. You know, a man without impatience leads to destruction. A man that's in a rush, a man or a woman that's in a rush to do something, it leads to destruction. So this is what this is saying. Like, you know, when you're in a rush and you haughty, that's what haughty means. You're in a rush, you know, that leads to destruction. And before esteem is humility. So before you can be glory, you given the glory, before you can be given the esteem, you have to humble yourself. You have to humble yourself before you can accept or receive esteem from anyone, the credit from anyone, the glory from anyone, the props from anyone, your flowers from anyone. No one receives flowers sooner than someone who is humble. You know, that's when all is in favor to give you flowers when you are humble, when you humble yourself. That's what this means. And before esteem is humility. Verse 13. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it is folly and shame to him. So he who answers a matter before he hears it, when you answer a matter, you feel like you know what this person is, how this person is going to end their sentence. You know what they're asking before they ask it. You know what they're saying before they finish saying it. That's showing yourself to be a fool. When you try you cutting people off and you're interrupting the point that they're making or what they're trying to say and what they're trying to ask or what they're trying to imply, and you assume. That's where that saying says you make a behind out of both of us when you assume. You make a behind out of both of us when you assume. This is what this means. It says he who answers a matter before he hears it, it is a folly and shame to him. It is foolish and shameful to that person to assume before and cut someone off and assume that they know what is being said. Verse 14, the spirit of a man sustains him in sickness, but who does bear a broken spirit? The spirit of a man sustain him in sickness. So during sickness, if you're in the ruach, if you're more invested in the ruach and the spirit, the breath of life of God within you, the spiritual child of God within you, if you're more invested in that, you'll overcome any illness eventually. You'll overcome it because you're in good spirits. You're in the spiritual child of God. You know, when you following his instructions, obeying his commands, you heeding his spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Eventually, you'll get over it through that ailment, that illness, or whatever it is you're dealing with. And that's what this is saying. The spirit of a man sustains him in sickness. But who does bear a broken spirit? Who bears a broken spirit? So when you're heartbroken over a relationship, or you're heartbroken over a loss of a loved one, it's hard to bear that. You need to grieve. You need to grieve. You know, when you lose a loved one, or you lose or you fall out of a relationship, that's that's tougher to get over. And this is what this is saying. But who does bear a broken spirit? Who bears that? That lays on. But if you're strong enough of a spiritual child of God, you're able to overcome it eventually. But everyone has to grieve. Everyone, no one is bulletproof from grief. No one is bulletproof from heartbreak. No one is bulletproof from that. That has to run its course. That has to run its course. Verse 15, the heart of the understanding one gets knowledge. The heart of the understanding one gets knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. The heart of the understanding one gets knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. So when you understand, when you have spiritual understanding, you get knowledge. And when you have spiritual wisdom, you're seeking knowledge. You're seeking this knowledge. So this is you gain this spiritual wisdom from reading the Proverbs, reading the Psalms, you know, reading the wisest man who've lived in his time, which is Solomon. That's how you gain this spiritual wisdom, because that spiritual wisdom was given by the Supreme Spirit. That's a spiritual knowledge, and that spiritual understanding was given by the Supreme Spirit to Solomon and given to us through Solomon. And we have it to read and go over and gain it ourselves, gain the spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding ourselves. So this is why we read the Psalms. This is why we read the Proverbs. So it says the heart of the understanding one gets knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. Verse 16, a man's gift makes room for him, and brings him before great men. So this is when you gift people, when you give gifts to people, it gets you in places. When you bring a gift or you send a gift, that'll get you indoors. That'll get you in places. You should be surprised how far that goes, how far gifting goes. People use it. This is how the world goes around. People love gifts. So when you give gifts and you send gifts, it'll likely get you around these people. It will very well likely get you around. The problem is when these gifts are bribes. That's when it starts to be corrupt. That's when it starts to be crooked. When these gifts become bribes, and it's twisting the law, it's twisting justice, and it's twisting fairness, twisting, what should be done. And that's when it becomes corrupt. That's when it becomes corruption. When these gifts becomes bribes. A man's gift makes room for him and brings him before great men. So you can use these gifts for good, to just to get yourself around, those, to talk, to make some change or make things happen, that are good. And, but you can also use this for bad, to make things happen that are bad, that are crooked and corrupt, verse 17, the first to state his own case seems right until another comes and examines him. So the first who states his own case seems right. This is what happens every time when you're the first to show up and tell your story. That's just one side of the story. Usually the first person to tell a story, it seemed like, oh, for real? That's what happened. That's what he did. You notice when the first kid, if you have kids or you have nieces or nephews, you have children, you work with children, and the first child that, first party child that comes to you and tell their story, it seems, they make themselves the innocent, the victim of it. They make themselves the victim of it all until the next child come up and explain, oh, it didn't go like that. He or she is lying. This is what happened. So this is what this is saying. The first to state his own case seems right until another comes and examines him. So that person that comes along that examines him is the witness that was there. Like, no, it didn't go like that. No, you didn't say that. No, it didn't do that. No, that didn't happen. So that's why witnesses are important, because you people would get away with telling the wrong story, for making up a different story and telling the story a different way if there wasn't witnesses. That's why witnesses are important in every situation. That way a witness can state, this is how it went, this is what happened, this is where, now you have cameras as the witness, you have surveillance as witnesses now, and that's a good thing, you know. Verse 18, the lot settles disputes. The lot settles disputes and separates between the mighty. So the lot is like a lottery. This is what you hear it, casting of the lots. And this is what that means. The casting of the lot was like a lottery. Like, people take this stick, and whoever had the shortest stick, that was the person that decides it. Whoever had the shortest or the largest stick or whatever, that would decide what, who was going to do what and who was what. That was their way of letting the Most High decide through these lots. And it's sort of like lottery, picking a ball out of a bunch. Verse 19, a brother transgressed against is a strong city, and contentions are like the bars of a citadel. So when a brother is transgressed against, it's like a strong city. It's like when someone is done wrong, you can't hold them back. When they felt like they've been betrayed, you can't hold this person back, you know? And it says, in contentions are like the bars of a citadel. So, like, the contention is like, yo, he's putting up a wall, putting up the bars. Like, you can't, they won't allow you in anymore. If they can't trust you, when a person can't trust you, they're not allowing you in. You've ruined that trust. You've betrayed them. So it's like putting up bars of a citadel, bars of a prison. Verse 20, a man's stomach is satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. He is satisfied with the increase of his lips. So a man's stomach is satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. So you have to speak good things to be satisfied. You have to speak what is good to be satisfied. You have to hate evil, to be satisfied. Learn to say that a lot. Learn to repeat hate evil, and it will go a long way. Um, he is satisfied with the increase of his lips. So speaking good things, will bring satisfaction. Speaking positivity, speaking blessings, speaking hope, encouragement. This is what brings satisfaction. Verse 21, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those loving it eat its fruit. So when you're speaking death, you know, it's likely when you're speaking negativity and speaking, speaking what is wrong and what is wicked and what is evil, it eventually, this is what you're going to experience. But when you're speaking life, when you're speaking life, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get more life, and eventually life in the hereafter. Verse 22, he who has found a wife has found good and receives favor from Yahuwah. He who has found a wife has found what is good. He who has found a wife has found good and receives favor from Yahuwah. So, yeah, if you found a wife, you just because you call her a wife, doesn't mean it. Was she was qualified. We're talking about qualified wives, and a wife that's living up to that wants to be your wife, to wants to carry herself as your wife and respect that role as a wife. That's the wife that the Most High, um you will receive favor from Yahuwah. That's a favor from the Most High, when you can find an actual wife who wants to be an actual wife and who wants to represent herself and respect herself as your wife. And you know that's the favor from Yah. Not any and all women that you call your wife is a favor from the Most High. It's sad, unfortunately, is they're not. All just because you married them doesn't mean they were uh they were worthy of that, because they show themselves not to be worthy of that. Eventually, they'll show themselves to not you know to not want that role, and to not want to play that role, and to not want to respect that role. That's the unfortunate truth. Uh, Verse 23: the poor speaks beseechingly, but the rich answers fiercely. The poor speaks beseechingly, but the rich answers fiercely. So the poor speaks beseechingly. Yeah, we're gonna have to look into that. Let me see. Uh, let's see what that says in another version. Poor speaks beseechingly. So, so the poor pleads for beseechingly is like pleading for mercy. The poor speaks beseechingly, like basically humbly and in mercy. The poor speaks in mercy. And the rich answers fiercely. The rich answers fiercely, like answers harshly. They're harsh. Rich are harsh. They have no empathy. They have no compassion, no remorse for the poor, who are begging for mercy, begging for food, begging for shelter, begging for water, begging for clothing, medication, healing. And the rich responds fiercely, harshly, no remorse, no regard. Verse 24: a man of many friends might come to ruin. A man of many friends might come to ruin, but there is a loving one who sticks closer than a brother. There is a loving one who sticks closer than a brother. So we all have, most people have friends who they are closer to than their own siblings. You have a lot of people that have friends that they are closer to than their own siblings. It's understandable. You know, some siblings you grow up, you were just siblings. Y'all just siblings. Y'all love each other, but y'all share different interests. You know, you have different views and different interests and different approaches. So yeah, this makes sense. You know, so whoever you share your views with the most and share your interests with the most, and that's who you're going to have a closer relationship than your sibling. And that's practically normal. Obviously, it's something that was noticed by Solomon in his time. That was the book of Proverbs chapter 18. We're going to get into the book of Ecclesiastes. We're going to get into the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 7. The book of Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 1. A good name is better than precious oil, and the day of death than the day of one's birth. Verse 2. It is better to go to the house of mourning. It is better to go to the house of mourning. It is better to go to the house of mourning where people are mourning. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting where people are eating, laughing, joking, playing, carrying on. Why is this? Because it's saying it's better to to stay humble. It's better to stay humble. No matter how, yeah, you may find yourself in a house of feasting, laughing, and kidding around, but it's better to stay humble because the the humbling events is coming. So it's better to stay humble to prepare for those humble events. So it's better to stay humble more than you are in a state of like foolishness. Like I don't that's a lack of a better word, but like a state of being um a state of laughter, a state of, feasting. Yeah, enjoy those times when you can. Enjoy those times every chance you get with family, with friends, as much as you can. But you have to maintain humility. It's a must that we maintain humility to keep ourselves prepared to keep ourselves prepared for any future humbling events. That's why we have to remain humble to keep ourselves prepared for any future humbling events that will catch us off guard while we're laughing and in a state of joy. That's why a lot of people are ruined, and a lot of people they are hit hard by humbling events because they weren't humble. They weren't in the state of humility. When you're in a state of humility, it's easier to accept these humbling events when they come and catch you, off guard. It's easier to accept them. It's easier to manage them and deal with them versus when you are in a state of foolishness, a state of laughter, a state of, you know, eating, drinking, and carrying on. So this is what this means. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to a house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living take it to heart. And the living take it to heart. Verse 3. Sorrow is better than laughter, Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the face, the heart becomes better. The sadness of the face, the heart becomes better. So sorrow equals humility. Sadness equals humility. The heart becomes better. The heart is stronger in humility. The heart is stronger in sadness. The heart is stronger in sorrow, because it can't be any more sorry. It can't be any more sad. It's in its humble state. So when you approach, when you maintain this sadness, you maintain this sorrow, you maintain this humility, you pretty much are prepared all the time for any future, for any further sorrow, any further sadness, any further humbling events. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by the sadness of the face, the heart becomes better. Verse 4, the heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. But the heart of fools is in the house of rejoicing. The heart of fools is in the house of rejoicing. Why is this? This is the humility we just speaking on. This is what this is about. This is what makes you spiritually wise, when you can maintain this humility. When you can maintain this humility, this is what makes you spiritually wise. When you're in the house of mourning. But the heart of fools is in the house of rejoicing. Always rejoicing. Always. This is why those who are always like rejoicing and laughing and carrying on, they're hit the hardest when these humbling events come. They're hit the hardest when mourning comes. You know? Verse 5, it is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise, the correction of the wise, the correction of the spiritual wise. It is better to hear the correction of the spiritual wise than for man to hear the song of fools. Like, even and that can even be an actual song of fools. Like, it's better to hear someone correcting you and giving you advice and giving you warning of what you shouldn't do, what you should do, and what you shouldn't do, than for you to block them out with your favorite song from your favorite artist. You get a lot of that. You ever notice if you have children, or if you have nieces and nephews, you're trying to bring to their attention, you're trying to warn them of future danger. You're trying to warn them of the path that they're going on. You're trying to correct them in where they were wrong. But they would rather have their earbuds in and listening to their favorite song. They would rather have their earbuds in listening to their favorite song. If you notice this, and try to block you out. Anyone would try to block you out when they don't want to hear, criticism. They don't want to hear correction. They don't want to hear, you know, yeah, they don't want to hear what you have to say. It says it is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for man to hear the song of fools. Verse 6, for as the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of a fool. That too is futile. That too is futile. That means meaningless. Verse 7, for oppression makes a wise one mad. For oppression makes a wise one mad, and a bribe destroys the heart. For oppression makes a wise one mad, a spiritually wise one mad, and a bribe destroys the heart. So those who are wise, they don't like when people are oppressed. They don't like being oppressed. They don't like people when they see oppression. They don't like seeing this. And a bribe destroys the heart. The bribe destroys the heart because it corrupts the heart. When someone bribes you and you're a person that's in position of authority or position of judgment, when you're in a person that's in position of judgment and authority and making right decisions and wise and making fair decisions, but when someone bribe you, someone can bribe your heart into making the wrong decision. Someone can bribe you into making an unfair decision. You know, this is this is what makes the heart. This is what destroys the heart because you have no heart. If you're allowed to be bribed, if you allow yourself to be bribed into doing to making the wrong decision, to making the wrong judgment, to going against you know the innocent, you know, to being in favor of the guilty. Verse 8, the end of a matter is better than its beginning. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. Always remember that. Always remember that. If you are in the beginning of an unfortunate matter, just know the ending is better. The ending is better. The end of a matter is better than its beginning. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. The patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. So when you're patient, you having patience is better than being proud. You having patience is better than being proud. Verse 9, do not be hasty in your spirit to be vexed, for vexation rests in the bosom of fools. Verse 10, do not say, why were the former days better than these? Do not say, why were the former days better than these? We're not to say that. We're not to, you know, uh, look at the former days like that, even though it's hard to not reminisce. It's hard to not have nostalgia. It's hard not to have nostalgia and reminisce because in most cases, those were better. We feel like those were better times. We were in better times when we were young. We were in better times when we were innocent. When we were before we became corrupt, before got exposed to the ancient knowledge of evil. We were in better times. So that's why we reminisce. That's why we reminisce and that's why we have nostalgia, you know? But it says, do not say why were the former days better than these. So we gotta catch ourselves from saying this. Why were the former days better than these? Because you have to understand what is happening. You have to understand the prophecies are being fulfilled. So even if times are getting worse or appears to be getting worse, you know that the prophecies are being fulfilled. And you have to link that to the prophecies. And what has to happen, what is happening has to happen because the prophecies have to be fulfilled in order for us to, bring in the kingdom and the kingdom era. Um, do not say, why were the former days better than these? For it is not wise of you to have asked about this. Verse 11, wisdom is good with an inheritance and an advantage to those who see the sun. Wisdom is good with an inheritance. Wisdom is good with an inheritance. So is when you left an inheritance is very important to you to be wise and for that person to be wise because you know what to do with that inheritance. Person that is not wise, that is unwise, will show you that they don't know what to do with that inheritance, and it's going to eventually be squandered. Squandered. You know the word that I'm trying to use. So wisdom is good with an inheritance and an advantage to those who see the sun. Verse 12, for wisdom protects as silver protects. Wisdom protects as silver protects. Wisdom protects you like money protects you. You have that a lot of rich people protect themselves with their money, but you can protect yourself almost even more than you can protect yourself with money with wisdom. When you make the wise decision to not go places, certain places, when you make the wise decision not to say certain things, when you make the wise decision to not do certain things, when you make the wise decision to not um, be around certain people, when you make the wise decision to remove yourself from certain circles, when you make these wise decisions, this is what eventually protects you. Like a rich person protects themselves with their money. So this is what this is saying. For wisdom protects as silver protects. But the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those who have it. The advantage of having this spiritual knowledge, the spiritual wisdom, the advantage of it is that it gives life to those who have it. How does it give life to those who have it? It gives life because you protect your life to preserve it in the now and also extend it in the after. The spiritual knowledge, wisdom, and understanding protects you in the now to prolong your days in the now and extend your days in the spirit realm. Extend your days in the spirit realm. So this is what this is saying. This is the advantage of having spiritual knowledge and wisdom. Verse 13, see the work of Elohim, for who is able to make straight what he has made crooked? See the work of Elohim, who is able to make straight what he has made crooked? Who? If something is crooked, it's crooked. If a person is crooked, they're crooked. They're corrupt. The Most High made them that way, unfortunately. Now they can beg to come up out of it, but the crooked people of the world are the crooked people of the world. They're the corrupt people of the world because they were created that way. It's unfortunate and it's not for us to understand. It's not for us to wrap our head around and try to make sense of it. These are people that are on the wrong side of prophecy. They're on the wrong side of fulfilling the prophecies. That's just how it is. Maybe we'll get answers one day, but right now it's not for us to, understand it. Only thing we can make sense of it is that they're on the wrong side of prophecy, fulfilling the prophecies. They're on the wrong side of prophecies, fulfilling the prophecies of God, of the Most High. These people who are crooked, who he's made crooked. Verse 13, see the work of Elohim, for who is able to make straight what he has made crooked. Verse 14, be glad in the day of prosperity, but in the day, be glad in the day of prosperity, but in the evil day, take note that Elohim has also appointed the one as well as the other. Elohim has also appointed the one as well as the other. So he made the good days and the bad days. He made the bad days and the good days. He made them both. He made them both. He appointed the one as well as the other, so that man should not uncover whatever shall be after him. So man should not uncover whatever should be after him. This is why he keep us keep us wondering. He keep us all, he um keep us in our place by basically whenever you got feel like you have him figured out, when you have the most high figured out, he shows you you don't. He humbles you and reminds you that you don't. And this is what scientists are dealing with. This is what the scientists of the world are dealing with. This is what, people who in their think tanks and think they have it all figured out. This is what they're dealing with. They're constantly being reminded, like, that they're just mere men. Verse 15, I have seen it all in my days of futility. There is a righteous one perishing in his righteousness, and there is a wrong one living long in his evil. How does this make any sense? This is not for us to make sense of it. These are people who are fulfilling these prophecies. This has been like it's been like this since the time of Solomon. People there are people perishing in their righteousness and people living long in their evil. So it's always been this way. Verse 16, do not be over righteous. Do not be over righteous. Do not be over righteous. Neither be over wise. Do not be over righteous. Neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? So you're obviously destroying yourself if you try to be over righteous. You're obviously destroying yourself if you're trying to be over wise. You have to give your flesh room for what it wants, which is not something it's that's too like just too foolish. And I'm just speaking on giving it a little bit of foolishness. You have to give your flesh a little bit of foolishness. Not give it a little no not give it in evil or give it wickedness, but a little bit of foolishness to keep yourself from not destroying yourself. And you have to have spiritual knowledge, wisdom, understanding to understand what I'm saying. Understand how to do this. Understand this balance. You have to understand this balance. Giving the flesh 10% of foolishness. And how I give my flesh 10% of foolishness through music, through movies, through fashion, through food, uh, laughter, events, amusement, all of that. This is 10% of foolishness that I provide my flesh. This is how I keep from destroying myself by being over righteous or by being over wise. This is how you keep yourself from being destroyed. It says, do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? So treat the flesh to a movie, treat the flesh to music, treat the flesh to food, treat the flesh to laughter, treat the flesh to pleasures with your spouse. Don't treat the flesh to harm it, as long as it's not harming anyone else, long as you're not slandering anyone else, long as you're not, you know, mocking, making fun of someone else, long as you're not harming anyone else, it's okay to treat the flesh to 10% of foolishness, not evil, not treating the flesh to evil, not treating the flesh to wickedness, foolishness. Because this otherwise you're going to find yourself being over righteous. Now it's a way to maintain this. Like I said, you know, you got to remain humble It's a balance, man. And you want you get you practice it enough, you're going to figure out that balance. You read enough, you gain enough spiritual wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. You're going to figure out this balance. You're going to figure out how to do this. Verse 17: Do not be wrong over much, and do not be a fool. Do not be wrong over much, and do not be a fool. Why die before your time? Do not be wrong over much, and do not be a fool. So this is what this is saying. Do not be wrong over much. So don't what it means by is what I'm saying. Don't be too foolish. And don't be a complete fool. Don't be a fool at all. Be wise, but you know, treat yourself to the foolishness of the world for the flesh that you're in. The flesh that you're in is seeking this foolishness, like movies, music, food, uh, pleasures with your spouse, laughter, wine. This is about as far as you can go with your foolishness. Anything further than that is considered wickedness and evil. Anything further than that, you're becoming a fool. If you overdo this, you will become a fool. If you, yeah, if you if you any if you entertain this more than you entertain spiritual wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, you will be a fool. You would be a fool. And you would, you would likely die before your time. And this is you would likely be unalive before your time. And this is what this is saying. Do not be wrong over much, and do not be a fool. Why be unalive before your time? So this just two verses. Do not be, verse 16 of Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Verse 16 of Ecclesiastes chapter 7, it says, do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Why destroy yourself? Verse 17, do not be wrong over much. Do not be wrong over much, and do not be a fool. Do not be a fool. Why die before your time? So you don't want to be foolish to the point you're unalive before your time. So you like the scriptures doesn't say anything about, you doing that. But it's like it's unnatural. Like why that's something I can, being as though if you're speaking about the herbs of the world, herbs are herbs are originally created to digest, not to intoxicate, not to put. I don't. I had to really think about this, how unnatural it is to inhale smoke. To inhale smoke is that's that's not natural or normal when you think about it. When there's a fire, you getting away from that smoke. You're not running towards it and trying to inhale it. You, of course, not to do that. But so, and it's fire. It's coming from a fire. So why? But why don't we see it that way with fire, with any fire? You know what I mean? we have to look at that the same way. It's like, why am I inhaling fire? Yeah, it's to bring on a feeling, but you have to question that feeling if it's through that way. You have to question what that feeling is if you're bringing that feeling on through that way. Now, like I said, it doesn't say anything wrong about the herb as far as like in digesting it, but as far as like in you're in inhaling fire, smoke from fire. That's what you're doing. That's that's clearly something that shouldn't be going on. Something is clearly something, and I used to do that, but something is off with that. Something is clearly off with it. That when you really think about it and really just stop to wonder, like, what am I doing? Like, what are you actually doing? What are we actually doing when we do that? Sucking in smoke. When that same smoke of fire would it burns this up. So what do you possibly think is doing to our insides? It's just a thought. It's just something to think about, to revisit. Now, digesting it is a different situation. You know, digesting it is a different situation, but I don't do neither, but I don't see where it says anything, you know, particularly wrong with the digesting of an herb. But I can't see anything where it says anything about inhaling intoxic and like inhaling actual fire, inhaling smoke of fire from fire. That's just not something normal when you think about it. That's not something natural when you think about it. When you really think about it. I know we never thought about it, but when I thought about it, that's what made me like not want to do it anymore. But so yeah, that's part of being like it says it's part of what we just the verse we were speaking on, which is the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verse 16 to 17. It says, do not be over righteous, neither be over wise, meaning do not be over righteous to the point where you're not watching movies, you're not listening to music, you're not laughing, you're not now like I said, it's better to be humble, but and to be humble at all times, but that can that can destroy you, you know? That can destroy you, and this is what this is clearly saying. It says, "Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise." Why destroy yourself? Why destroy yourself? You know, and what I mean by it can destroy you because you're trying to psych yourself out that you're not in like you're not dwelling in this flesh. The flesh desires what it desires. The flesh does not want what the spirit wants. The spirit does not want what the flesh wants. The best thing to do is to feed the spirit more than you feed the flesh. Rule over this flesh. Rule over this flesh by giving it the bare minimum, giving the flesh the bare minimum, which is food, which is laughter, which is music, you know, occasional wine if that's what you like. But food, give it the bare minimum and rule over it and give it nothing else. Don't give it the pleasure to mock and make fun of people. Don't give it the pleasure to slander people. Don't give it the pleasure to, you know, commit adultery, and don't give it the pleasure to unalive people and steal from people and Don't give it the pleasure to do any of that. Don't give it the pleasure to do any of that. So this is what I'm speaking on. This is what I'm explaining. I'm not telling you to, you know, to be wicked or be sinful or be. I'm telling you to. There's ways to indulge in the bare minimum of foolishness without disobeying the commands, without um, being outright sinful. You know, and this is when you keep yourself from being destroyed, and you be able to balance your spiritual child of God within you, the spirit within you, with the flesh that you forced to dwell in. The flesh that we're forced to dwell in. This is how you balance that. This is how you're able to not be. This is how you keep yourself from being over righteous and being over wise and destroying yourself by giving the flesh the bare minimum of foolishness. How do we know this? Verse 17, do not be wrong over much. Do not be wrong over much, meaning don't be wrong to where you're doing people wrong, saying what is wrong, and doing what is wrong. You're not doing what is wrong by watching a movie. You're not doing what is wrong to anyone by watching a movie. You're not saying what is wrong to be watching a movie. You're not doing what is wrong to others by listening to music. You're not saying what is wrong to be, listening to me now. You have music that say what is wrong, but you have to know what it is. You have to keep it in context and know that you don't need to be hurting people's feelings. You don't need to be hurting. You don't need to be going around hurting people's feelings. You don't need to be going around slandering people. You don't need to be going around calling people out their names. You don't need to be. You don't need to be doing that. It shouldn't lead to that. It shouldn't lead to you calling people out their names. It shouldn't lead to you, you know, slandering and lying to people and making fun of people. It shouldn't lead to that. When it leads to that, then you're being wrong. You're being overly wrong. You're doing people wrong. You're saying what is wrong, and you're doing what is wrong. So that's what this means by do not be wrong over much and do not be a fool. Why be unalive before your time? Why be unalive before your time? Verse 18, it is good that you should take hold of this. It is good that you should take hold of this and also not withhold your hand from the other. It is good that you should take hold of this and also not withhold your hand from the other. This is what this is saying. For he who fears Elohim comes forth with all of them. For he who fears Elohim comes forth with all of them, man. He who hates evil come forth with all of them. Like they come forth knowing that they're imperfect. People who hate evil comes forth knowing they're imperfect, knowing that they're in the flesh, knowing that the flesh has needs and they rule over the flesh and stop it from overdoing it. Yes, knows this flesh watches a movie. My flesh watches a movie. My flesh listens to music. My flesh laughs. My flesh, seeks a spouse. My flesh, this is what our flesh does. But we rule over it to keep it from harming people. We rule over it to deny it from wanting to say the wrong things, do the wrong things. And this is how you can be both. You can obey and also acknowledge what the flesh can and cannot do. This is how you be both and how you maintain both. For he who fears Elohim comes forth with all of them. Verse 19, wisdom makes the wise strong, more than 10 rulers that are in the city. Spiritual wisdom makes the wise strong, more than 10 rulers that are in the city. Verse 20, for there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin. For there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin. What this means is like the flesh is has a sinful memory. The flesh has a sinful sense of humor. The flesh has a sinful emotional reaction and instincts. The flesh has a sinful nervous system where it responds and it wants to respond, it wants to react sinfully. Each of our flesh has this. So you can't go and say that you without sin because you have sin in your memory. You have sin in your natural instincts. You have sin in your imagination. You have sin in your emotion. How someone makes you feel. Someone calls you out your name, you're going to instantly get angry. Someone do you wrong, you're going to instantly want some get back and wants to tell them about themselves. So this is why it says, for there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin. It doesn't make them any less of a righteous man. They just acknowledge that their sin is in the flesh. They just acknowledge that their sin is in their muscle memory. They just acknowledge that their sin is in their nervous system, which is their natural response, their natural reactions. They just acknowledge that their sin is in their imaginations, that they have no control over. Now you can control, the way you can control it is to rule over it and deny it, deprive it, deny the thought, deny the reaction, deny the natural instinct, deny the idea, deny the memory, rebuke the memory. But you can't stop the memory from popping up in the head if something triggers you to remind you of it. You can't just stop the imagination from popping up in the head when something triggers you and you know and activate that idea that in your imagery. You can't, only thing you could do is rebuke it and not act on it. But this is what makes us, you know, this is what makes a righteous man, this is what makes a righteous man on earth one who does not, it says, therefore there is not a righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin. And this is a righteous man. And there's not one righteous man on earth who does good and does not sin because of the muscle memory, because of the memory, because of the imagination, because of the natural instincts of the nervous system and the emotion that we have. Verse 21. Also, do not take to heart all the words they speak, lest you hear your servant cursing you. Don't take to heart what you hear. Because why? You're going to want to respond. You're going to want to tell a person how you feel about them. You're going to want to make them feel how they made you feel. This is the natural instinct of the flesh. So don't take it to heart. what you hear. Verse 22, for you know in your heart that many times you have cursed others. For you know in your heart that many times you have cursed others. This is what he's trying to point out. Don't act like you're don't act like you're just this saint. Don't act as if you are sinless, because it was many times you have cursed people in your heart, slandered them in your heart, wanted something done to them in your heart, wanted something to happen to them in your heart. So this is what is pointing out why, no one can act as if that they're just right, they're holier than the next person, more righteous than the next person. No one can act like that. No one can. Verse 23, all this I have proved by wisdom. All this I have proved by wisdom. All this I have proved by wisdom. I said, I am wise, but it was far from me. Verse 24, that which is far off and exceedingly deep. Who does find it? Come on, man. We think that we know this and know that, and we're smart, and really don't be knowing, like, it gets deeper than that. It gets further than that. It gets broader than that. Verse 25, I have turned around even my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and conclusion, to know the wrongness of folly, even of foolishness and madness. He sought out this. He sought out foolishness, madness, folly. He sought out the conclusion of it. Verse 26, and I found more bitter than death the woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are shackles. He who pleases Elohim escapes from her. He who pleases Elohim escapes for her. So that means he who follows instructions and obey God's commands escapes from this woman. Escapes from this woman. But the sinner is captured. The sinner is captured by her. The one who don't follow his instructions is captured by her. The one who doesn't obey his commands is captured by her. This is what he came to know. This is what he came to discover. That the woman whose heart is snares and nets, whose hands are shackles, the men who follow the instructions of God escapes from her, while the sinner, those who don't follow his instructions, is captured by her. Verse 27, see, this I have found, say Koheleth, counting one by one to find a conclusion. Verse 28, which by being still seeks, but have not found. I have found one man among 1,000, but a woman among all these I have not found. A woman among all these I have not found. He hasn't found a woman that can He hasn't found one woman that can manage all of what he just spoke in this chapter. Chapter 7. That can balance the spirit with the flesh. That can be more obedient than foolish. He found one man out of 1,000, but a woman among all these he has not found. One man out of 1,000 can being manage to not be over righteous and to neither be over wise to the point they're destroying himself. One man out of 1,000 that is able to not be wrong over much and to not be a fool to the point they're unalive before their time. One man out of 1,000. But a woman, not one. Not one was able to do this, to able to maintain this, to not be over righteous, to not be over wise, to the point they're destroying themselves, to not be over wrong or to not be a fool, to the point they're unalive before their time. This is the book of Ecclesiastes, by the way, chapter 7. Heavy jewels in this chapter. Verse 29, truly, this only I have found, that Elohim made straight, but they have sought out many devices. The Most High made us, he intended for us to be straight. But we get so bored that we seek out these devices. We seek out the knowledge of evil. We got to get up and do something. We got to get up and go somewhere. We got to get up and see something. We got to get up and hear this. We got to get up and meet up with someone. We got to get up to see somebody. We got to get up and go places. He intended for us to be straight in the knowledge of good. But we just can't help to go dabbling in the knowledge of evil. He intended for us to be He didn't even intend for us to know the difference between the knowledge of good and evil. He didn't even intend for us to know the difference. I'm sure his intentions were just for us to know the knowledge of good. Just know the knowledge of good. But yet, the knowledge of evil was introduced, and we can't help but to indulge. We can't help but to seek out. We can't help but to be curious. That was the book of Ecclesiastes chapter 7. That completes this part of the reading. I'm going to close out this live, but I'm coming back on. I'm going to pick back up in the book of Leviticus, I believe. I'm going to get back on and pick up in the book of Leviticus. If you're able to, you're able to log back in, praise Yah. If not, peace, love, Shabbat shalom, love, and peace.